Hi, welcome to the Portland Spring and Beer Wine Fest. I am delighted you're here. My name's Stephen Schrombler. I'm here with my friend Damian.
Howdy, it's good to see you. Glad you're all here. Hopefully you're going to learn something from our little talk and interview here. So I'm excited to be here and good to see you all.
So make sure you hold the mic up, speak right into
I
it.
will hold the mic up and speak
There you go.
right into it.
So Damian is the owner of Be Local, which is what's on his shirt.
So Be Local, what we do is we produce neighborhood-based honeys or geographically based honeys. So our hives are in different neighborhoods in Portland. So when you go and buy our honey, you can buy it from Laurelhurst, you can buy it from Mount Tabor, you can buy it from Alberta, Montevilla, where else? Laurelhurst and a bunch of other places. So
you got to hold the mic up closer, like right there, like you're kissing it.
mwah.
There you go.
How's that? Is that better?
So when he says that you can buy it from those places, you can't go to Alberta. He doesn't have stores at all those places. Tell me if this is correct.
Yeah.
You have hives at those places, and so the Alberta bees, those are more hipster bees.
There are more hipster bees. So yeah, the hives are located in the neighborhoods, and the honey is harvested directly from those hives. We don't blend the honey together. We keep it separate because each neighborhood will taste differently. They'll have specific taste profiles, colors, and flavors that are unique to that neighborhood. So like Beaumont will be completely different than Mount Tabor. And we also don't heat our honey, and we don't ultra filter it. We filter it enough to get the errant bug leg out, the bee legs. But the pollen and all the good stuff is still in there. And the reason we don't heat it is because we don't want to cook all the good floral flavors out of it. We want the good, aminos and minerals and pollen and all that stuff in it. And you can really taste the difference. So if you come by, our booth, we can go through a little tasting. But what's really telling is when you go to the store and you buy one of those little honey bears, right?
Right into the mic. Got to be like
you
right
get
there.
those little honey bears, and you get some of our honey, and you taste it side by side, and you'll absolutely taste the difference. The stuff in the honey bears is terrible. It tastes like kind of syrupy. So, and then with our honey, you taste it, and you will get, you'll literally taste your neighborhood. You'll taste those flowers. It's uncanny. It's absolutely unbelievable.
So what is the cool name for what you do? I know there's a cool fancy name that I don't say correctly. Beyond beekeeper, right?
Yeah. An apiarist.
An apiist.
Yeah.
What is it?
Apiarist, apiist. I don't know.
Apiarist.
Beekeeper.
So
bee slave.
apiarist does not involve primates, correct? Nope.
No. I purely work with bees, and we work mostly with. We like feral bees because they're have been here for a long time and they're acclimated to our environment. Because we have specific problems with beekeeping here in the Pacific Northwest, which is cold and wet. If our bees get too cold and too wet, you'll lose a colony. So we like bees that I go and collect from swarms. People call me. And these bees tend to be really hardy and really kind of already acclimated to our environment. So that's what we like to work with.
Make sure we're going to be right in there. So how did you, now I know the story, which is a really cool story, but how did you get started? So when he says he's a beekeeper, he does a lot of work tending these bees, keeping them alive. He visits with them. He has little bee couches for counseling. No, not really. So how did you end up with this whole bee thing?
So about 8 years ago, I was talking to my neighbor, and my neighbor said, "Hey, I am getting a beehive." And I looked at him and I said, "That's awesome. I want to keep bees. I would love to keep bees. I've always wanted to do it." And he said, "I'll tell my uncle to bring you up a hive next week." And I'm like, okay. And so his family had been keeping bees down in Southern Oregon since the 70s, right? For a very, very long time. And the next week, this white van rolls up, and his uncle comes out, and he is carrying the beehive. And we went into my backyard, plopped it there, and opened up the hive, and they all came flying out. And that just got me hooked. That was it. I mean, from there, that hive grew into 2 hives, because that's what happens. And then from 2 hives, I had 3 hives, which was a little much for my backyard, because it's not huge, right? So I was like, what am I going to do with this? And I was talking to a friend of mine who lives in a different neighborhood. I'm in the Mount Tabor area. My friend is in Brooklyn. Okay, so he was
For
saying.
those of you that don't know, Brooklyn is
sorry.
a neighborhood in Portland. He didn't actually fly to New York, which is cool. Do they have bees in New York?
They do. They have them on top of. Actually, I was just kind of through Facebook was introduced to Ted Allen, the guy who does, Chop, the host of it. And it was because a friend of mine who's a writer knows him, and he was tending his bees. So yeah, I mean, there's actually quite a rooftop thing going on in New York, Chicago, Detroit, Seattle, Portland, all over. Brisbane, Melbourne, Australia, Paris, London. I mean, it's just happening everywhere.
Now, these are bees that are city bees, basically.
These are urban bees, so all our bees are within the cities. So we're either in backyards in neighborhoods, or like earlier this week, we just installed hives on 3 hotels downtown. So Hotel Lucia, Hotel Sentinel, and the Deluxe. And then we're also going into the 9s next week. So all those will have rooftop hives. And the idea is that honey will go down into their bars and into their restaurants. So that's where they'll get used. And right now, of course, they already use our honey, and they have specific drinks they make with it and that sort of thing.
So now the 9s has that departure bar up top.
Yeah, Departure and the Urban Farmer will use the honey.
So
yeah.
I could go with you
Yes.
to put the bees up. You deal with the bees, and I'll go to the departure.
Yes, and I will work hard, and you can be in the bar and get wasted.
That's how I like to work. Okay, so back to the question.
Yes.
We're back to the story.
Yep.
So you had 1 beehive, and then 2, and then 3, because they multiply like rabbits.
They do.
And then
They
your
do.
neighbor lives in Brooklyn.
My neighbor lives in the Brooklyn area. Now, when I went to harvest, I noticed that the honey was completely different in color and in taste. And I was stumped for a little bit. I was like, why is that? Why is the honey completely different? And then, of course, it dawned on me. It made total sense. It's because bees forage within a 1 or 2 mile radius of their hive, basically, right? So if the forage is different in each neighborhood, the taste profile and flavors will be completely different. So what you end up happening is you are literally tasting your neighborhood. And from there, I placed hives in several different neighborhoods to make sure it panned out. And lo and behold, it did. So, Laurelhurst is different than Brooklyn, than Mount Tabor, and et cetera, et cetera. And then the Bee Local was just kind of launched, and it's garnered great support, and people seem to like it. And, I'm absolutely thrilled at where it's going, and it continues to grow, and we have some pretty big things on the horizon.
So when did you actually, so I know, when roughly did you start with the beehive in your backyard? When was that?
Gosh, whatever 8 years ago was. What is that?
I don't know, but 8
I
years,
don't-
someone good at math tell
Yeah.
us. I'm not, my
I'm not.
daughter's not here, so.
So anyways, 8 years ago, and then it took a while, and about 3 years ago, I officially launched Bee Local.
Excellent, and people can buy your honey here in the Portland area?
You can buy our honey in the Portland area. You can order it online, or you can go into places like Zupan's, Market of Choice. We're soon to be New Seasons, soon to be Whole Foods. We also manage hives on top of some of the New Seasons as well. And then smaller boutique places like Woodsman Market, Pasta Works, Alder and Company, Foxfire Teas, Salt and Straw. Salt and Straw not only sells our honey, but they use our honey in their ice cream.
So now, about how many books have you read on bee stuff? So Damian's, some people think he's like really opinionated if you talked about certain bee topics, honey topics. He's not. Well, he is actually very opinionated, but it's because he's very, very, very passionate, and he loves to learn. So he has, I think, a master's level of education in being an apiarist. Is that how do I say that?
Sure, yeah.
No, I mean he knows a lot.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
some of the facts he told me eventually just my eyes glazed over because I'm not that smart. But my daughter was with me the first time I visited with him, and she loved it. She is that smart. But how many books do you think you've read?
Oh, I don't know, 10 or 20 or something like that. Whatever I can get my hands on.
More than
And I also talk to a lot of
Big
beekeepers,
library.
not only around here, but also internationally. I'm connected with other people working with other species of bees, which are, to me, is very fascinating. I mean, the range of species is incredible. So we have, like, for example, in Cambodia, they have a giant honeybee, and it's about that big. And they live, and they're not cavity nesters because it's so warm, so they don't have to be. But they build nests on limbs of trees, and the nests are about 9 feet, like that. And the honey hunters who go out into the jungle to collect it, don't wear any gear. And these are big, big bees. They don't wear any gear, and they make these primitive sort of torches to smoke them. and they just get right in there and cut the honeycomb out. It's really amazing. Now, on top of that, there's another bee called Apis florea, exact opposite, a dwarf honeybee. They both live in the jungle.
Little
The dwarf,
baby bees.
dwarf honeybee, tiny, and it's a beautiful, beautiful bee. Once again, it's an open nester. There's also like Apis unicolor, which is in Madagascar, and this is one that kind of blew my mind. So this particular bee, there's a tribe in Madagascar, and what they do is when their members die, they put them in coffins and they hoist those coffins into trees. Okay, so this bee, being a cavity nester, likes to make its home in those coffins, and so there'll be a colony of bees in that coffin producing honey. So another tribe comes in and they surreptitiously will get that honey, and then they sell it, but they can't say where it's from because it's just really kind of taboo because it's touched the other side. So it's really fascinating to me. So there's all these cultures around the world based on honey and these particular bees, and it goes on and on and on, and I could bore you to death about it.
No, but wait. Now you guys aren't bored, are you? This is like weird, and you're enjoying a talk about bees. I mean, when I was talking to Damian, what did you tell me? You said that there is. I didn't know this. I'm not that smart. I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. But there's honey in Somalia. There's bees in Somalia, right?
Oh, the Eritrean stuff.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so north of Ethiopia is Eritrea, and Ethiopia and Eritrea, old culture of honey producing and that sort of thing. So I've also got, at my shop, I also collect just really rare and hard to find honeys. And some I have this amazing stuff from Eritrea that's from my good friend Sam's, I think, aunt's backyard, and she brought it over, and it's white and it's crystalline, and when you smell it, it's just this clear, bright smell, and when you taste it, it's gorgeous. You get this, it's soft, resiny sort of flavor, and then it finishes kind of like a green, like legume. I don't know how to describe it. It's really just, it's like nothing you've ever tasted before. And also, recently my friend was in Ghana, and she brought back some honey for me as well. Once again, absolutely unbelievable. And this is honey from shea, baobab, and neem trees. And it tastes like a Werther's caramel. It is incredibly rich and delicious. So what's so magical about honey is that no matter where it's from, if it's treated correctly, and that means not doing anything to it, you are capturing this specific time and place that will never be repeated. So you're stopping time, and you are you're kind of I don't know. It has a terroir. I mean, it has its own flavor based on that environment, based on what the forage is and what the weather's going to be like.
And then you told me about in the high Himalayas, the abominable snow bees.
Oh yeah. So in Nepal they have Apis laboriosa, and that's actually the biggest honeybee. And it's much like Apis dorsata, so the one in Cambodia, except for it's a little bit bigger and a little bit meaner. And they hang on these cliffs in Nepal. And what they do is there's not a lot of forage up there, but there's a lot of rhododendron. And rhododendron has something called a granotoxin, and it will make you intoxicated. And if you eat too much of it, it will make you really sick. And it goes away after a while, so it's not dangerous, but you get kind of like, kind of drunk, and you'll start barfing, and it tastes really good, but you don't want to eat a lot of it. I actually have some, they also call it mad honey. And I think it was Xerxes fed it to some opposing troops so he could conquer them because it made them all sick, right? I actually have a really nice example of it from high alpine slopes in Italy, and it's lovely stuff. And as long as you don't eat too much of it, you're fine, but you can feel it. It kind of makes your tongue numb a little bit, but it tastes amazing.
Okay, so what's with this? What does this thing do?
So that's one of our tools. That's a smoker, and that's for the bees. And so what we do is we open this top up, and that's the leftover toothpicks from the sampling, because we'll just burn those, right? Recycle. So we fill that with a combustible material, something that's not full of, doesn't have any toxins or anything like that. It could be paper, it could be a piece of wood, it could be, some dry leaves on the ground. We fire that up, we get the smoke going, and then we make sure the smoke's cool because we don't want to harm the bees, and we just gently give them a few puffs. And what that does It does. Oh, there you go.
It
So-
makes them high.
Yeah, gets them wasted. What they do, what happens is they think they sense the smoke, they think a forest fire is coming, right? And then they start gorging on the honey. And so they're concentrating on filling up their honey stomachs in case they have to leave the nest. The other thing it does is it interrupts their chemical communication system. So if you're in a hive and you squish a bee, which you always will, no matter how gentle you are, when you do that, it releases an alarm pheromone, and that alarm pheromone tells the other bees, get this guy, right? So that helps interrupt that communication system. So you have the bees that are just concentrating on filling up their stomachs and ignoring you, and then in case you do squish one, this helps you survive.
So this is one of the tools that you use to
That is
harvest the honey.
That is one of the tools.
And then you go to the hives once a month and you harvest the honey, right?
Once a season.
Once a year.
Once a year.
So
Here in the Northwest. Sometimes you can do it twice a year, but mostly you're just going to do late August, early September.
I didn't know that about honey. That about once a year, maybe twice a year if you're lucky. That's how often you get honey. It's not like you could go every week and milk the poor little bees, or every month. You have to. It's once a year.
Yeah, and it depends on the weather too. So, for example, if like the past couple of years we've had really wet springs and these really hot, dry, long summers. Well, that's great for us, but it's not good for the bees because the nectar flow dries up. So the harvest is not going to be as good. Now, if I was in Hawaii, say, we're talking harvest year-round, all the time, as fast as they can fill it up. So it just depends on your location.
So one last thing before we talk about a couple of your honeys.
Sure.
Do you guys see this right there? Look at that.
So that's a hive tool, and that's a J-hook hive tool. It's the one I like to use. Yes, I am a dedicated beekeeper. If you can see it. And this just allows us, this is like, if I was a carpenter, this would be my hammer or my saw or something. It's just something we use all the time. And we use it to pry open the boxes because they get stuck together with propolis. And we use it to lift the frames out and to scrape and to clean and that sort of thing.
So propolis is honey bee plaster.
Yes, propolis is honey bee plaster. And what that is it's stuff that it's tree and plant resin. So the bees will go out and they'll land on like trees and they'll collect the resin and they'll kind of mash it together with a little bit of wax. They'll take it back to the hive, and what they do is they fill up tiny little cracks. Anything that's below 3 or smaller than 3/8 of an inch, they'll fill with propolis. Anything larger than 3/8 of an inch, they'll fill with honeycomb. And 3/8 of an inch is called bee space. So it's a very particular measurement, right? So when they're putting the propolis around in the hive, they're filling up any cracks, and they're also just kind of putting it all over the inside. And propolis is antiseptic, antibiotic, and it also prevents mold from growing in there. So they're actually creating a sterile environment inside of the hive for themselves.
So the reason that if you go to, what's your website?
www.beelocal.com.
So if you go there, it says 3/8 on the website, and the reason it's 3/8 is bees leave bee space 3/8 for them to crawl through because that's how big they are.
That's it. That's bee space.
All right, we're almost out of time, but this is my favorite. He's got a number of honeys. This one is my favorite. If it was up to me, he'd rename it motor oil. It's dark, and it's strong, and it's amazing.
Yeah, it's dark, it's rich. So this is a buckwheat honey. Buckwheat tends to be really dark, really thick. When I describe it to people, I always say it's like barnyard and molasses. And when you taste it, you will taste that. It's very earthy, very minerally. Some people love it, some people hate it. A lot of folks that I've been talking to who are brewers have been coming around, yeah, this is great for brewing for porters and that sort of thing.
If you like beer, if you like porter,
Yeah.
get this honey.
Yeah.
And normally I don't like wheat bread that has like nuts and twigs and pebbles in it, that's really, really strong, healthy wheat bread. But get some of that kind of wheat bread, toast it just a little dark, then put real butter on it, not margarine. Margarine's wrong. God does not want you to have margarine. Put real butter on it, and then put some of this, you took it away. I need the prop, man. Some of his Oregon buckwheat honey and a cup of coffee. It is just superb. It is fascinating.
Yeah, it's fantastic stuff. My chefs like to use it on savory dishes, so pork, meats, that sort of thing as glazes. Absolutely delicious. But I will say, do not make a mead with it. It tastes like wet dog and cat litter.
I've not had that experience with that honey, but I will trust you on that.
Yeah, it's not good. And if you do use it for mead, use very little, a little bit of it. We did a gallon. We used 3 pounds of it, and it's just, whoo, wretched.
Okay, so
Horrible.
we're at the Portland Spring Beer Wine Fest.
We're at the Portland
and
Spring
you
Beer Wine
have-
Fest.
You have some opinions about people that use honey
Yeah.
to make beer or mead. So
Yeah,
as you finish up,
do.
tell us that.
Yeah, I do. So one of the things that I think is a mistake that people make when they're brewing with honey is they boil it. Do not boil your honey. You're cooking it, and you're killing all the flavors and all the volatiles. So you don't want to bring honey above its natural temperature that it is in the hive, which is around 92 to 95 degrees. So bees keep the inside of the hive, no matter how hot or cold, right around that temperature, okay? And so when you go above that, and when you start hitting about 100 degrees, you start cooking everything good out of it, and you destroy the flavor, you destroy the taste profile, and all that good stuff that you want in your beer. You want it or mead or whatever to make it taste good. You're cooking right out. So try not to do that, or actually don't do that.
So we have one more guest to join us, which is really cool. But could you guys give Damian a big hand?
And come over to our booth and try some honey.
And not only try it, but go buy some. Buy some. Tell him that you know me, and he'll double the price. And you are.
Hello, everybody. My name's Nick Lorenz, and I'm one of the founders of Nectar Creek, and we make meads down in Corvallis, Oregon. And so what I'm going to do is tell you guys a little bit about what mead is, just how it's defined and how it fits in as a category of alcohol. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how to make it in the brewing process, and then just a tiny bit about the meads that we make and what we have here.
And then you'll get to drink some. So if you guys want to go pass it, pass them out. So you're going to get a sample of two kinds. The raspberry, and I want one too. Like, you could bring me one actually on stage. Last time they didn't, I will drink one right now. And because you guys will drink it all and I won't get any, and that's not fair. Alexa already has her eye on it. I can see that, right? You're like all over the honey.
So I'm going to start out by telling you guys
What mead? Tell us what mead is.
really simply what mead is. And the easiest way to describe this is that all alcohols are simply defined by their sugar source. And so what sugar is being fermented is then what categorizes it. And so beer very simply means
you
that
rock.
it's fermented from barley, that all the sugar that is fermented comes from barley. Wine technically means any fruit, which all of us typically know as grapes. And then mead is its whole own category of alcohol, simply meaning the fermentable sugar comes from honey. And similar to all those other things, it can be a whole range of styles. It could be anything from a dry, light, carbonated mead, something called like a session style mead, all the way up to more of an aperitif style of drink that's 12, 18%, has a lot of residual sugar, and more as a dessert style wine.
So this ginger that they're trying, what kind of mead is this ginger?
So the ginger mead we have here is technically a methyl glen, and a methyl glen means a mead made with spices. And it's also a session mead, so it's a mead made under 7% alcohol. And our ginger mead we make in Corvallis, Oregon. 100% of our honey comes from Corvallis, Oregon, and we're using just raw, unfiltered white clover honey. And one thing that we do that really helps the flavor profile is we do a 100% cold brewing process. And
So wait. So you do not, where did I say? What did Damian say? Don't boil the honey, and not over. Anybody remember how many degrees? 92 to 95. 92. So you don't boil your honey.
no, sir.
Good man. Good man.
Absolutely.
Don't boil your honey, and don't take her in a hot tub. No, just kidding.
So our ginger mead, it's 100% white clover honey, all from here in the Willamette Valley. And what we do is add pure organic ginger root that we juice in-house and add raw ginger juice. And the entire thing is a cold brewing process. So what you get with that is a really big aroma and bright expression of ginger up front. But drink's a little bit subtler. You don't get that spicy, hot character from the ginger. Instead, it's replaced with this little bit of sweet, floral character that comes from the white clover honey.
So
And
this raspberry, what kind is the raspberry?
the raspberry is also a session style mead, and it's technically a mellow mel, and mellow mel means a mead made with fruit. And our raspberry mead is 100% Willamette Valley raspberries. We're using real fruit that we puree and add into the end of the fermentation, and we use a different variety of honey for this one. And all those different varieties of honey and all those different flavors that we were just talking about are something that definitely carry through to the final product and the final style of mead that you make. And so depending on what product we use, we'll use different varieties of honey. Our raspberry mead is primarily wildflower honey. And wildflower honey, of course, is made up of many different nectar sources. And it's such great great thing because you can pick out all these subtle little flavors from all the different flowers. And even though it's such a simple thing, it's just honey, you can get hundreds of different tastes just because of all the flower sources.
So how long have you guys been in? How long has Nectar Creek been around?
Nectar Creek, we opened in October of 2012, so we're about a year and a half old at this point.
And how long have you been making mead?
And I've been making meads for about 4 or 5 years, and my brother and I actually started this company together. And my brother is the real mastermind behind it all. He was a beekeeper. He managed about 5,000 beehives down in Corvallis, Oregon for the better part of 8 years. And one thing that's really great for what we're doing is that we live in this really fertile Willamette Valley, one of the best places for honey production and agriculture in the country. And we're able to source 100% of our honey from this farm where my brother was the foreman for 8 years and get all of our honey just right there, right in the same town that we're making it.
Excellent. So just to close up, I heard a rumor. It may or may not be true. You may or may not know this rumor. Some of the things I know aren't actually true. But if you discover that,
Don't trust him.
I often don't want to know. I'm happy with my myths. But I've heard that mead has a connection to honeymoon.
Mead does have a connection to honeymoon.
So when you get married, you go on a honeymoon. You guys aren't married yet. But when you get married, you'll go on a honeymoon, right? She seems awesome. Come on, man. All right. So you go on a honeymoon. So tell me about the connection between mead and honeymoons.
Yeah. So this is a pretty fun story. There's an old Scandinavian legend that what happened is when a couple got married, it was the job of the father of the bride to provide enough mead to the couple that after their marriage they could go away for a full cycle of the moon, so from full moon to full moon, and they were supposed to exist off of just consuming and drinking mead for that whole time. And then people often consider mead an aphrodisiac and say that sort of thing, and the reason being that they're supposed to go away and come back bearing a child. And so the expression honeymoon comes as a celebration, one, for the length of the moon, two, drinking mead, and then also considered an aphrodisiac because of the idea of bringing pregnancy. I've always kind of laughed at that because it's like, if you go away for a month, I think no matter what you're drinking is probably going to be considered an aphrodisiac at that point.
Well, so what's your website?
You can find us at nectarcreekhoneywine.com. And you can find our stuff pretty readily throughout the whole state of Oregon, all of the new seasons in the Whole Foods and Zupans and most of the major grocery stores, as well as a lot of the specialty beer bars and bottle shops throughout here.
Hey, can we give him a hand?
Thank you, guys.
You did a great job. Well, thank you so much. Have a great time at the Portland Spring Beer and Wine Fest. Take care.